everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to start off with our 8x10 canvas once again, and I just want to apologize ahead of time for any glitches you might see, and just letting you know I got a new background so you don't see a bunch of ads in the background. Alright, moving on. So the paints we use is a titanium white, an ivory black, a lemon yellow, an emerald green, a cobalt blue, orange, burnt sienna, and vermilion. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to take one long piece of tape and put it on the canvas to mark the line, so that way the green doesn't mix with the black and the black doesn't mix with the green, and this way we also have a nice straight and even line. So we're just going to use the emerald green, and we're going to paint the entire top half this emerald green. And you just want to make sure that you also get all the sides as well. If you want it to look better, in my opinion, getting the sides makes it look more finished and professional, so that way when you hang it up on the wall, no one just sees like a bunch of white sides. That's just a little tip for you. So our next step is to take our ivory black, and we're just going to paint the whole bottom, still using the same big brush, just cleaned off, and also still making sure that I get the edges to give it a more finished look, as I said earlier. So after I let the background dry, I just take the tape off, and I sort of messed up here, and I have this big white line now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a smaller brush and fill in that white line green, because I didn't want the black section to be any bigger. So here you just see me filling it in with green to make it better and not have that white line. Again, sorry for all the glitches. I don't know what happened, but I am trying my best to figure out what it could be, and I'm hoping to get it fixed sometime soon, so that way my next video doesn't have them. And as you can see, there's kind of like a dark line where the green originally ended, so I just go over that a few more times off camera to make it darker and blend in with the background a bit better. So for this next part, I used a stencil. You guys can freehand it if you wish to, or you can use a stencil as well, but we're just going to make the honeycomb now, and I just used the hexagon stencil and moved it around for each little hexagon in the honeycomb. So after I finished drawing the honeycomb, I went ahead and drew the bee. This is how I decided to draw it because I thought it looked really cute, You guys can draw it however you wish to, or you can draw it the way I do. Either one works. So next we're going to take the lemon yellow and our smaller paintbrush, and we're just going to start filling in the hexagons of the honeycomb. And I had to go over these hexagons with many layers to get this specific yellow to go over and actually show up to the point where it didn't just blend in with the green in the background. So I don't know if you guys might have to do the same thing depending on which paints you're using or which version of yellow you're using. You might have to go over many times. This just takes a bit longer if you have to go over it many times, but trust me, it is worth it in the end. So after I finished the first layer of the honeycomb, I went over the yellow stripes of the bee to get that first layer done. And I also had to go over with many layers for the yellow bee stripes too. Again, this yellow is kind of irritating, especially when it takes about half an hour just to go over the same thing over and over and over again. But it is very worth it in the end, and I love how this one came out. So I just sped it up so you didn't have to watch me go over it a million times. Then the next part is to just go over the black stripes in black. So the next step is to take the cobalt blue and go over the wings in the blue. Usually wings are clear, but I figured this blue gave it a bit more color, so that way you don't just think the wings are green or boring looking because they're just outlined. You don't have to go over it in blue if you don't want to, but I thought it made the bee look cuter in the end. For the wings, I only had to do 2 coats to absolutely make sure that no green was showing through whatsoever. For this next step, I used my letter stenciling to trace out the letters Be Proactive, but B was spelled with 2 E's as a little bee pun to make the painting have a little humor in it. I know it's a really cheesy joke, but I found it adorable, and I hope you guys do too. So now that the words are traced, we're just going to take our titanium white and start going over each letter in the white. And I also wanted to say sorry for the light change all of a sudden. I had to film this later in the evening because of how long the paint took to dry. So it started getting dark outside, and then I had to turn on my overhead light so I could actually see what I was painting because it was getting too dark outside. So sorry if you can see the shadow of my head and the camera later on. So for the letters, I did have to do a couple of coats just to make sure you couldn't see any of the black. It's pretty hard to paint white over black because the black tends to show itself through the white. So I just had to do a couple extra layers to be sure that white was all you could see in the letters. I did do some touch-ups with the black to get rid of any of the white mistakes I may have made. I would suggest it. It gives the letters a cleaner finish, but you don't have to if you don't want to. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the burnt sienna, the orange, and the vermilion, and then we're going to mix them all together to kind of create this orangish brown to outline the honeycomb with for the lines. And I just kind of went over those lines one more time lightly with a pencil over the paint, just so I could see where the lines were, because with all the layers of the paint I couldn't figure out where the lines were, so I had to retrace them. And now I'm just mixing up the colors to get a more orangish brown instead of just a plain brown or plain orange outline. I kind of wanted it to be a mixture of both. So after mixing all those colors, this was the color I ended up with. And then I'm just going to take my smaller brush and outline it. I used a brush that was a bit too big in the beginning, and then once I realized that, I decided to use the smaller brush so that way it didn't have such thick lines. And then I just outlined the entire honeycomb, and I'm happy with how it came out. So after I'm finished with outlining the honeycomb, I just take that same small brush and I create a black dotted trail on the green part that goes into a white dotted trail on the black part to show where the bee has supposedly flown. And I thought it was really cool how the color change as it goes through the black worked out so great, and I loved it. I did have to go over the lines a second time just to make them more visible, so that way they weren't just like these kind of transparent black dots sitting on a painting. So after I finished with the bee's dotted path, I took my black pens and just outlined the bee and drew its little happy smiley face to give it a really cute and finished look, so it didn't just look like a bunch of colors smushed together with no like apparent outline. And I felt that it helped it to stand out a bit more as well. So after I finished with the outline, here is the final product. I am super happy and proud with how it came out, and I hope you guys are too. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.